Hey everybody, welcome to episode 101 of the Is That Normal podcast, and there are three of us here today. We have a special guest, Tyler Boggs, who may or may not be related to me.
Yes, and Tyler is many things. So Tyler is currently the leader of our high school ministry at our church, which is something I formerly did. So he is my successor. He is also the grand organizer and leader of information technologies at our local school district. Hence the Bison Tech shirt there. Yep. Good job representing. You're also a barbecue enthusiast.
Yes.
Yes. He has got an enormous smoker. It's a sight to behold. It's a Frankenstein. Would you call it a Frankenstein smoker?
A Frankenstein homemade, consisting of some auction items and some trailer house pieces, actually, if you want to know the truth.
Which all are elements of good barbecue.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
They go hand in hand.
Yes. He's also a drummer. He's played drums for a lot of years. Plays in our worship team off and on. So he was currently on and now he's off.
As of yesterday.
Yes. He's also a husband and a father of these two beautiful little girls who are just fascinating to watch. And it's fascinating to watch Tyler be a parent to them. That's also been really a good thing for me. He's also Randall's cousin and my cousin-in-law. And so we've all known each other and done a lot of things and have things that we could say about each other that we won't on record. So
these are all true. Basically, if I had to boil it down, Tyler's life role is if it's broke, doesn't work, or nobody knows how to use it, Tyler's the person you go to.
Oh, that's...
Yeah.
I sum myself up a lot of times at church as the spare tire. That's my role. Just wherever I'm needed.
Whatever's broken, you can fit that spot.
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of what I do.
So we're glad to have Tyler on our podcast today to talk about some of the generational distinctives that you've experienced in your own life and in our current generation of young people in our youth group and that we've interacted with. But first, we have a really important question.
Yeah, so another thing that we all three share in common is that we all love music. Music's been a big part of our lives. We all are avid music listeners, music players, but very different. Like we all have very different tastes and stories and how we got involved in music. And so the important question that we've got to ask today, and we'll start with Tyler's answer, is what is your go-to like rebel song, like Fight the Man song?
So this is a hard question for me to answer because I don't know if I can narrow it down to just like one song. I'm a big like Pandora station guy, so I have like over 100 stations on my Pandora. And so I probably go more towards like a station than a particular song, but if I had to narrow it down, kind of my go-to background would be like probably rebel outlaw country, like A Country Boy Can't Survive, or Long-Haired Country Boy, or there's always classic Merle Haggard stuff, Fight Inside of Me, and that kind of stuff. So
that's good.
If I were to pick somebody maybe a little more newer, Chris Stapleton has some good stuff. I'm a huge bluegrass fan, but I really can't think of any necessarily rebel bluegrass. Bluegrass for me, a lot of the things I like, it's either like really happy stuff, or it's like, we're gonna bury you in a
murder
cold...
ballads.
Yeah, exactly. It's like murder ballad. Yeah.
Although a good "Stick It to the Man" song set to banjo is hard to beat.
It is.
Oh man, I saw something beautiful the other day. I saw Bella Fleck and another banjo player play Europe's "The Final Countdown," and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Anyway. Side note.
So one other song I will mention, I can't say it's my favorite, but it might be the most like out there random ridiculous thing that I've heard in a long time that falls kind of in this category, that I don't know how it really made it on a record, but it's Jerry Reed's Amos Moses song, because like it's like a rebel Cajun song about a guy using his kid as alligator bait. So like I don't know what you do with that.
I don't know if that's a rebel song, but that is beautiful weirdness right there.
It is
I like
so
it.
Weird. You should check it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, Tyler mentioned a couple of mine, like The Fight Inside of Me or something like that. But the one I find myself quoting most often is the theme song from Malcolm in the Middle by They Might Be Giants. You're not the boss of me now. You know that song?
Yes, I do.
And you're not so big. So I find myself quoting that one most often. So that's what I'm going with.
You don't live with a 4-year-old.
You're not the boss of me. Man, that's good. I like that. Those are good answers, man. I grew up, my dad was the outlaw country guy. Yes. And which I say for nostalgia, I do go back and listen to that stuff. But at the time, like for me to be rebellious, I had to rebel against that.
Yes,
and
yes.
So I listened to a lot of punk and heavy metal music. That was all about Stick It to the Man and anarchy and stuff. But probably the ones that I go back to that like you said, like come to my mind that well up without of me is Oh Porcupine by Me Without You. There's this weird folk indie hippie band who sings a lot about Jesus. And so that song is all about how, man, we got to fight the status quo of the way life goes and find a better purpose. But an honorable mention is this like 90s or late or early 2000s era metal band Blindside, and they had this song about the Holy Spirit that's called About a Burning Fire, and it has the best screaming, like you can hear this guy's throat just like coming out of his mouth moment. That's like one of my favorites. So yeah, so those are kind of mine. So, but today we're going to reach back to another great Rebel song from The Who, and we're going to talk about our generation.
Well, welcome back to the Is That Normal podcast, and we just celebrated our 100th episode, and so if you missed it, go back and check it out. We give you 100 things that you should know about teenagers, and so there's really hard-hitting content in that, so go back and check it out if you haven't seen it yet. So today, as we move on to episode 101, we have invited Tyler Boggs to join us, our new youth leader, new old youth leader. Yeah.
Never left the youth leader.
Yes, that's right.
Never left.
Yes.
Leader, yeah.
So to join us and just talk about some of the trends that he's seeing in young people and their growth and their faith today. And but first, we want to learn a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about your faith experience as a teen and a young adult.
Sure. Okay. Well, I became a Christian when I was 8 years old, so been in the church my entire life, not just the church as a whole, but this particular church that I go to, Calvary Chapel, and grew up here. A lot of believers in my family, so I have a church background. For me, my early middle school, teen years, early middle school was a rough time for me, just because having grown up in church, and probably having a pretty black and white, solid right from wrong personality and mentality, as kids around me started experimenting with things and just trying to figure themselves out. I think I tended to write people off that I thought were not maybe doing what I thought they should, and probably a little bit of a legalistic or better than them attitude sometimes. And then that started to change and get better, I think, in high school. In high school, I had a pretty good big group of Christian friends, and we did a lot of things together. We're very involved in like FCA and youth group, as we kind of already mentioned, and so that was a good time for me in high school. Like I said, I had a pretty solid, good group of friends to do stuff with. A lot of times I kind of felt like I was the one that parents were like, oh, well, if he's going, it'll be okay, which maybe was good, maybe wasn't.
Right.
We never got too crazy, but
yeah. So for you, you mentioned several factors there, but like, could you maybe dial in or expand a little bit on what were some of the key things that helped you either grow in your faith or stay very grounded and stable in your faith?
Well, obviously, family was was a big part of that. And, my dad has always been really open to talk about spiritual things in Scripture. And so anytime I'd have a question, maybe, especially any kind of theological type things, he was always there to talk to. But then I've always had, relevant youth leaders in my life, Mark being one of them, and then some middle school teachers as well that really spent a lot of time with me, and just beyond that, having a place to be involved from a very early age. I've been involved at church through various ministries and been given opportunities to serve, but also responsibilities. And even in middle school age, I started working with technology here at the church and had things that I was responsible for. And I think that has been a big piece of my spiritual involvement and growth over the years, is just knowing that I made a difference and that there was a place for my skills and my talents and my abilities to be used.
So what would you say were some of your challenges in growing in your faith that you faced?
Oh. I think, like I kind of previously mentioned, at a younger age, maybe in a maturity sense of the way of dealing with people in a way that is inviting and welcoming to them, and understanding grace a little better to offer to other people. A challenge for me always in ministry, I'm a very task-oriented person, and sometimes that can get in the way of seeing the needs that people may have, which is really, what ministry is about, is the people. But sometimes you get busy trying to do things that you think are ministry, and overlook maybe the more spiritual or emotional needs that people have.
Yeah. So one of the nerd things I love to study and talk about is like the differentiation between generations. So we've got, right now there's somewhere around 5, maybe 6 like generations currently living in disharmony with each other. Sure. And so I think it's always interesting. So I'm what they call Generation X. So we're like the lost, forgotten about generation between boomers and millennials. Yeah. And then you guys are both probably what I would call older millennials. Yes. Like you're millennials, but you're you were some of the first millennials born. So you're old. Yeah. And millennial. And
we're old and millennial, yes. It's millennials with gray or missing here.
That's right. So maybe, and both of you could feel free to answer this. I think it's interesting. What would you say the differences were in your faith journey than others in your generation, other millennials that you grew up around or with?
Well, so I know that the whole generation thing is locked kind of to specific ages and when you were born, but I also think a big factor in that is the age and the generation of your parents. And so for me, it's kind of interesting. So there was almost a generation between my grandparents on my dad's side and my grandparents on my mom's side, because my mom was my grandparents were pretty late they were in their 40s when they had my mom. And so, I think there was kind of a difference there in just maybe the way some of the values and stuff, because they changed through the generations. And so, being, like you said, on the older side of the millennials, I think I may tend to go a little more towards the boomer generation, maybe with some of my thought processes than like maybe even you, even though you're older, just some things. But, as far as my my peers go and my generation, I mean, you know, the thing I would say, even when I was in school, you were starting to see the things that had always been a common moral compass kind of erode through media and just exposure that kids had at what age they were having exposure to certain things and you know, like I said, growing up in church and stuff, I was pretty sheltered to a lot of that, but I know some of my peers weren't as much.
Yeah, and just to echo that a little bit is our generation really was was an interesting time period of, you know, especially the older segment of what our millennial generation is, remembers a time before technology was, you know, here and things vastly shifted to still being somewhat, you know, young enough to be an early adopter of technology, and yet like seeing how it has changed, completely reshaped and changed our society, and kind of in a unique perspective of seeing both sides of that and kind of experiencing both sides of it. But it definitely, I've seen in people my age, it definitely changed, you know, just the exposure to new ideas and new information and you know, both positive and negative, things that, you know, before that you had to actively seek out. Now it's at your fingertips. And so being forced to make decisions or be exposed to things before we really solidified our system, our faith, or our system of beliefs, before being exposed to, you know, a whole lot of other, you know, ideas and philosophies and things like that. So I think that's caused a lot of confusion and internal struggle with a lot of people in my generation.
Yeah, I like all of that, and I hear from both of you and know from both of you, and just some of those stable and even older generational influences were a big impact for you guys. You know, you
Absolutely.
both had grandparents that were very involved in your life that, you know, had some of those different worldviews and philosophies, and were able to help solidify that, and then just that commitment and cohesiveness of your family, which is not everybody's story. That's good stuff. So now, Tyler, the kids that are in your youth ministry, they're not millennials. These are Generation Z, and they are a different set of people, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
So what are some of the differences you see with this generation of kids from what you experienced in your faith journey as a teen and young adult?
Sure. Mm-hmm. You know, we joked earlier about me being in youth group and never leaving, and that's kind of true. There was about a 3 or 4 year period where I was working in Springfield, and I wasn't able to really be as involved as I had been at one time in youth ministry. And so I went for about 3 or 4 years, and that's been close to 10 years ago now, that I wasn't really around a lot of high school aged kids. And I remember when I came back from that break, it was vastly different than it had been even just 3 or 4 years before. You know, there's a lot of positive things about some changes that I've seen, but there's also some things that are concerning or challenges. You know, kind of as what Randall referred to. Most of our youth group kids, our high school kids, I mean, they don't remember a world prior to cell phones, and definitely not prior to internet access and information. And so that makes them very resourceful in finding answers and finding doing research online. However, there's also a big challenge of helping them to learn how to trust a resource or trust or know how to detect if something is legitimate or some, you know, not every voice online is one they should probably be listening to more than people in their actual lives, but that's sometimes a challenge.
Yeah.
I've also seen a really big shift in commitment level of, I'm going to be here, or I'm going to do this thing regardless of, who's going to be there, what, that's the big question when you have an event or something, before kids will even commit to going. Well, who else is going? Who's going to be there? That kind of thing. And so some big challenges there. I see a lot of willingness, though, for this generation to interact with others in some ways, and be accepting.
Yeah.
And in some ways good, some ways bad. There's certain things that this generation, like issues with gender and sexuality, it's not a shock to them when someone says, I'm gay, or I'm bi, or I'm whatever the case may be, which is not necessarily a great thing, but at the same time, it's not something that they're so shocked by it that they are taken off guard or speechless, or or even really greatly offended by it and when I say offended by it, I mean in a way that would be harmful for them to be able to share truth if they believe. Now, the flip side to that is there's a lot of, I think, kids that don't know the truth or adhere to the truth real solidly as well. So, that's a challenge that comes with that.
So what would you say are some of the things that you feel like are the same between generations that maybe haven't significantly changed, that maybe are still some of the struggles and things that
Sure.
kids face?
Well, I think kids want to be loved. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel like they're part of something. And I think that's been the case always. Like I mentioned, I think it's important for us to be able to provide opportunities for them to serve and have roles that make them know that their talents and their gifts and their presence is needed and wanted within the church as a whole. And I think family is a huge piece for all of us, and is still for our students.
So, our aim or target for our audience is, we really want to be talking to parents and grandparents and concerned adults. And so, so you mentioned family. So what is the role of parents or concerned adults in your youth ministry?
That's a question I've been wrestling with myself, as I'm somewhat new to this, in some ways, and being charged and just trying to figure that out. We've added some folks in the last year or so to help with our youth ministry, which has been great. And ultimately we want our parents to be engaged in what's going on, and know that we're here to support families and specifically their high school students is my role, but we want parents involved. What exactly that looks like right now, I'm still kind of working on, honestly.
Yeah. So if you could just speak, look at a camera or look in the face of some adults, what's one thing you wish they knew right now?
Oh man. Regardless of what they may say or do, high school students need personal interaction with adults. One-on-one or small group, in person, not on social media, not, distracted. I see that so much. There's just such a relationally starved generation and real relationships, And I think the other thing is that I would tell parents, kids know how to find information. They know how to do research. Where we really need to be teaching our kids is how to be good human beings, how to relate to others, how to interact face to face, because it's just not happening anymore. And I don't think we as a society had to be too intentional about that in the past. It just came naturally by learning from your peers and your family and stuff. But nowadays, it's kind of like the phenomenon of kids turning 16 and not wanting to get their license. That sounds crazy to those of us, even millennials, who couldn't wait to get our license because that was our freedom. But for our kids these days, a lot of them don't really care about it because it really doesn't change anything for them, because they have a lot of unsupervised time online, and I'm not, I don't know that that's all bad, but it just seems like we've lost that ability for young people to even really know how to carry on a conversation, just a normal conversation, much less you get into any kind of serious conversation or confrontation or any of that. I've seen that really play out in the workplace a lot in the last 10 years where I've been, seeing young people struggle with this strange mixture of overconfidence and insecurity, where they don't want anybody's help, they don't want any input from anyone, but then when they go out on their own and they try to do something and they make a mistake, they can't handle any kind of correction or frustration. And I think that carries over not just in the workplace, but in relationships as a whole.
Yeah. Well, one last question, Tyler.
Sure.
Big question. Big vision question. Right?
Okay. So,
describe your hope for this current generation of kids.
Oh, man. My hope for this generation would be that they would develop a firm foundation in truth and know what truth is, and be willing to stand up for the truth against so much media attention and secular attention of anything goes or whatever feels right is what's right, and beyond that they would grow into productive adults that would raise families and continue to spread truth to their families and their loved ones.
Good stuff. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us today. And as we wrap up today, our two takeaways. The first is just, as Tyler alluded to earlier, take an opportunity this week to find a moment to have that intentional face-to-face interaction with a teenager. And, that is something that you can't put a value on. And like Tyler said, that face-to-face personal interaction is just something that all of us need, and especially those youth. So find a time to do that this week. And the second is to subscribe and like and leave a review so others can find us and find this content. Be abnormal.